So Hare Krishna. So we'll discuss. So previously we have seen the introductory sessions of Bhagavad Gita, where we discussed about the fundamental topics about how we are not these bodies, we are a spirit soul, and how ev- what is the significance, how we can practically say there is a creator like that. No, that does God exist, or why should we accept scriptures? And also we discussed about the law of karma, and other topics, application of spirituality in our life like that. Okay, so now we are entering into the Bhagavad Gita. So it would be better, and you can get better understanding if if you already have seen that sessions, or already have that knowledge, because that will give in-depth knowledge about specific topic. Because just like in Bhagavad Gita we use the terms, and we use the the what do you call, flow, in such a way that we just use the topics, like just like when we use karma, and when we use the material world, when we use the spiritual world, like that we use all those terms. And if we had that, if you already had seen that sessions, it would give better understanding. So now in Bhagavad Gita, we'll start with Mangalacharan. So basically what we recited, I recited in the beginning of session, which start with Om Agnana Timirandhasya, that is Mangalacharan, that is mentioned in front of Bhagavad Gita, like in the introduction of Bhagavad Gita by Srila Prabhupada. So it is basically, Mangalacharan is something which creates auspiciousness, which is offering prayers to the lotus feet of Krishna. And this is the Mangalacharan of regular Bhagavad Gita reciters, like somebody who wants to recite Bhagavad Gita in any platform, they recite this. Om Partaya Pratibodhitaya Bhagavata Narayanaya Swayam Vyasena Gaditam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam. So Advaitamrita Varshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayanam Amba Tvam Anusandhyayani Bhagavad Gita Bhagavad Veshitam. So we never recite this Mangalacharan, but I'm just giving you the knowledge. Okay. So basically it is good to have the knowledge of like a Vedic cosmology also in Bhagavad Gita, how everything works, because when Krishna speaks about all these things, basically I will explain how it works. Okay. This PPT settings has changed. Okay. So basically, when we come to any spiritual topics, why we actually follow any religion is like different people have different reasons. Like some of them, some of them follow because they are instructed by their parents, or their elders, and some of them follow and some of them come to spirituality just to get the knowledge. Some of them like some of them come to spirituality because they would think it will remove some inauspicious things from our life, like that. Just a minute. So everyone has specific reasons for why they have to take up to spirituality. You're able to see the screen, right? Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. So when it comes to Bhagavad Gita, how Bhagavad Gita will give the perfect knowledge, how Bhagavad Gita will educate us is first, we start like generally any person, anyone who is living in this material world, including the animals and everything, they have specific nature. Basically, the nature itself gives some intelligence, acting on the instinct. Means whatever is comfortable, you do that. Whatever is giving sense gratification, we go there. That is a basic instinct. That is a basic thing that everyone in this material world, in the spiritual, does. That is the by birth we have that knowledge. Okay, that is animalistic life. So we don't have to do much endeavor for that. Just how to eat, how to sleep, how to mate, and how to defend. These are the four things that are common for animals and also human beings. And then next to that life is conditioned life. Conditioned life means we actually work. The fruit worker. What is fruit worker? Fruit worker means like we work to get some fruit. Phalam, we say that, right? Phalitam. Phala means fruit. Fruity worker means one who works for the fruit of enjoyment. Okay, just like a employee or employee works throughout the month only to get a paycheck at the end of the month. Or any businessman does all his business only to get the profit. That is the fruit of his work. So that fruity worker performing rich. So there are two types of fruity workers. The fruity workers that are mentioned here is the somebody who is performing fruity work. In Vedas, and there are some sacrifices. Just like Rajasuya Yagya or Ashwamedha Yagya or Putra Kameshti Yagya. Like that, many yajnas and vratas and homas and rituals also there. Constructing temple or constructing hospital. These are all pious activities. These will give pious results. So and that is the pious result is the fruit. And these persons are higher than the conditioned life, animalistic life, because they are regulated. Means they don't they don't act on the instinct, but they do. We say that vichakshan, like with distinction or with regulation. They act with regulation. So they are higher than the animalistic life. And above karma kanda is karma yoga. Means somebody who wants to who renounces the fruits of his action. Basically, in the previous section, we saw the fruits of fruity worker. Fruity worker, what he does, he works to get the fruit of action, and he enjoys the fruit of action. So basically, he is just like a employer, working where I will work and I will get a salary and I will enjoy I will enjoy my salary. That is regular fruity worker. So but the karma yoga, in karma yoga, the person does the same thing, but he renounces the fruit of his labor. Means it is not meant for his enjoyment. He works for enjoyment of higher authorities. Just like we gave in the example in the introductory session, like a person, when a soldier in the army, he is at the border and he kills hundreds of enemy soldiers. And he doesn't have any enmity with the opposite soldiers, means enemy soldiers. He's only working for the king or working for the nation, and he is awarded, and he is not obliged to go. He's not responsible for any of the killing. But if the same soldier comes home and he picks a quarrel with the neighbor and kills the neighbor, and immediately that same soldier will be kept in the jail, because in the first case he was not working for him. So that is the difference in conditioned life and a yogic life. A yogi In a conditioned life, he gets the fruit and he enjoys the fruit. But in the karma yoga or yogi, he gets the fruit, but he uses that results of his action for the benefit of others, or for the sake of higher authority. Just like the soldier, he kills for the sake of nation or for the sake of the king. So the results of his actions are taken by the king. So whatever the karma associated with it, means like if somebody kills, like like as per the law of karma, if you kill somebody in this life, in this life or next life, you should be killed. That is a law of karma. Because if you don't atone for that sinful activity, you will be killed in the next life. That is the laws of karma. That is just like action and reaction. For every action, there is equal and opposite reaction. So the karma yogi who renounces this labor, like who uses his fruit of action for the sake of higher authorities, if he desires, he can go to heavenly planets where there is better facilities for material enjoyment. Just like we cannot, like this in this material we have limitations for enjoyment. Just like if you want to eat something, just like for suppose we like to eat nice sweets like gulab jamun or something like that, and you started eating. First gulab jamun tastes very good, second gulab jamun tastes okay, and third, fourth, fifth, after eating 10 gulab jamuns, 11th gulab jamun doesn't taste at all. It doesn't taste like it is very distasteful, because it is like we cannot handle that much of happiness, that much of pleasure. Our senses have abilities, our stomach has abilities, our body has abilities to only certain abilities, certain ability to enjoy only certain level. So, but if the same person goes to a heavenly planet, in the heavenly planets, he can enjoy as much as he wants. He can keep on eating all day long, and he doesn't have any digestion problem. He doesn't develop any distressful. He will have the same taste how the first gulab jamun tasted, and the 100th gulab jamun also tastes the same thing. So that is the facility given in the heavenly planets. Means better material facility for the sake of enjoyment. And next to that level is Jnana Yoga. Somebody who, like Karma Yoga means, what is Karma Yoga? Karma Yoga, he is doing the work and he is using that fruit of his action for the sake of higher authority. And Jnana Yoga, he is inquiring who is what, and who am I, and where do I belong to. And this Jnana Yoga renounces the fruits of action, and he actually then he doesn't engage in karma, but he study of the Vedas and study of the scriptures, and he performs austerities. So that is the Jnana Yogi. So this Jnana Yogi, then this Jnana Yogi, what he can achieve is, he can go beyond this material world and go into the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. Brahman means, like just like I will explain you what is there. Okay. See. And above that is Ashtanga Yoga or Dhyana Yoga, means somebody like his Jnana Yogi actually means study of scripture, study of Vedas and Upanishads and all the like that. That is, he gains the knowledge, and with his knowledge he actually goes to Brahma Jyoti. And Ashtanga Yogi, he performs this dhyana, this meditation, and that's how, like the sages like Vishwamitra or something like that, we already have that knowledge about all those things, right? How they will have, they attain mystic powers, and sages like Bhrigu, they all are Ashtanga Yogis. So these Ashtanga Yogis also, they renounce the fruits of action, means they are not doing for sense enjoyment, and they acquire the knowledge, and they control the senses and mind with eightfold path, and performs meditation. They meditate on Paramatma. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead has three features: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Brahman means impersonal, like he is impersonal, means he is spread all over the universe, both spiritual and material world. That is impersonal Brahman. That is also called Parabrahman. Okay. So, and Paramatma is someone who is sitting beside us, besides the soul. so Paramatma means super soul. Soul and super soul are together in our body. Okay, so the super soul is sitting beside the soul, and the Ashtanga yogis, they meditate on this super soul, and they get the darshan of super soul. And this Ashtanga yogis, at the time of leaving their body, they can go to any planet they desire. If they want to, they can go to Sargaloka. If they want, they can merge into the impersonal Brahman. If they want to go to sun planet, they can go to sun planet. So they can go to anywhere, like whatever they desire during when they are leaving their body. And above Ashtanga yoga is Bhakti yoga. See, Bhakti yoga, so like a Bhakti yogi performs loving devotional service. Basically, his karma, his jnana, and his yoga, he uses all these things only to engage in loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord Krishna. So this is the ascending path. Okay, so animalistic life, like first animalistic life, from animalistic conditioned life, from conditioned life, then he will perform karma yoga. Means he starts working properly, and after that, renunciation of the results of his work, and then come to jnana. No, because karma is not giving him the happiness, so then he engages in jnana. Means he started inquiring, reading Bhagavad Gita, reading Vedas, reading Upanishads, and after that, he will take to any of the process. No, Ashtanga yoga process. Ashtanga yoga process is worshipping the personality of Godhead within the heart. So culmination of all these effects, all these things, he engages is Bhakti yoga. Means Bhakti yoga means performing loving devotional service. Basically, Ashtanga yogi or Jnana yogi, they don't enjoy in this material world, because they don't enjoy anything of this material world, because they take renunciation, and they do austerities in studying, or they do austerities in meditation. Why? Because they think that everything is God's property. Everything is nothing is my property. As long as I'm enjoying in sense gratification, I cannot make spiritual progress. So I refrain from this. So by that tapasya, by that austerity, they acquire powers. Is they receive the empowerment from the Supreme Lord. So, but a Bhakti yogi, he works for the Lord. Is whatever he is doing. Now he is doing the job. He is doing. He stays with the family. He is doing job. His jnana, means he inquires whatever his ability to acquire knowledge. He acquires the knowledge, so that he acquires knowledge how to perform bhakti, how to engage himself better in the service of the Lord. And also Ashtanga yoga, he does sense control only for the sake of engaging in the service of Lord. So basically, his life is always centered around loving or offering his loving devotion service to the Lord. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti yoga is the highest of all yogis. Okay, and that kind of person, they go to the spiritual world, and they actually, after they leave this material world, they go to spiritual world, where like they acquire the same features as Krishna. If you go to Vaikuntha Loka, they acquire 400 form. If they go to Golok Vrindavan, where Krishna is in 200 form, they also acquire the same features of Krishna. So that is the destination of a Bhakti yogi. So that's how Bhagavad Gita takes us.
Someone wants Murti
Tomorrow.
tomorrow.
Yeah, Sunday, ask them to come Sunday. Then give them.
Prabhu is in your class 11 today.
Start just now. Don't disturb. Okay? So we got an idea, right? What Bhagavad Gita is taking us. You know? That's why in Bhagavad Gita, that is description of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga. And in the beginning also, Krishna describes what is beneficial for everybody. So these are the principles, means like this, like a roadmap in which this is discussed in first 6 chapters. The Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Ashtanga Yoga is discussed in the first 6 chapters. And Bhakti Yoga is discussed in the 7th to 12 chapters. And then Jnana Yoga is already discussed in the last 6 chapters, from 13th to 18 chapters. So So I told you that I will show you the chart of the Golok Kunda, right? So this is how the Vedic scriptures explain. This is one material universe. One material universe is called Brahmanda, means every universe is in the shape of an egg, and in each universe there are different realms, means like Bhuloka, Borloka, Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapoloka, and Satyaloka. These are different realms, and there are some planetary systems down also. Atala, Sutala, Talatala, Satala, Patala, like that. There's different planetary systems. There are 14 planetary systems within one universe, and beyond there are unlimited number of universes, and beyond this which is below this Brahma Jyoti is material universe, and above this material universe is spiritual world. No, we are starting from Kailash here. Okay, I have to do that. So here, like the spiritual world starts after Brahma Jyoti. So after Brahma Jyoti, then different Vaikuntha lokas come, and after Vaikuntha loka, then Madhurya loka, means Madhurya Dham, means where Krishna stays. So Krishna stays in the spiritual world, which is called Golok Vrindavan, and below Golok Vrindavan is Ayodhya Dham, and below Ayodhya Dham is different Vaikuntha lokas, and below Vaikuntha lokas is Kailasa, where Lord Shiva resides, and below that is Brahma Jyoti. So this Kailasa is not referring to the material world Kailasa. This Kailasa, there is one Kailash in spiritual world, there is one Kailash in material world also. And above that is Brahma Jyoti. Brahma Jyoti is impersonal effulgence that is coming from the body of Krishna, which is spread all over spiritual and material worlds. So after Brahma Jyoti, the spiritual world and material world are separated by this Brahma Jyoti, and below Brahma Jyoti comes the material worlds. Okay, different material worlds. This is one universe like that. So that's how these different yogis and jnanis or bhaktas, they go to different planetary systems after they leave the body. So we actually, this course, in this course we started like application of Bhagavad Gita, right? So what we'll be doing is we'll be studying the philosophy what is presented in Bhagavad Gita, and we'll see the context on which the discussion happens in Bhagavad Gita. So basically, then from there we have to take the principle, okay? But the relevance, the examples can be modern examples, means you take the principle from the scripture and we actually apply that in our context. Context might be different, but principle has the same effect. So if for example, if you say in Battle of Kurukshetra, they fought with arrows and clubs and everything, and different astras. But nowadays the fight happens with guns. So fight is common, but the what you call the context or the way it is done is different. So the same thing, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, has been going on for many centuries from the beginning of creation. Previously, their way of doing that is different, and nowadays the way it is doing is different. So what I mean to say is, we actually use the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, we discuss the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, and we take the context in which we can apply. We take the principle from Bhagavad Gita and apply to our context. So basically, I will give a short background story of Battle of Kurukshetra. So we all have know that, right? In Mahabharata, there are Pandavas and Kauravas, and Pandavas are cheated and by the Kauravas, and they were exiled for 13 years. And after coming back, they said, give us our kingdom back, so that because we are born in Kshatriya family, we are Kshatriyas by nature, so we cannot do any other thing. So we need a kingdom to rule. So, but the Duryodhana, who is the leading person in the Kauravas, he refused to give the land, which legitimately belongs to the Pandavas. And the Pandavas sent Krishna as their messenger, as their messenger, and so that war can be avoided. So Krishna says that So okay, if you want to keep the kingdom of the Pandavas, you can keep. But because they wanted to rule, I will convince them, but at least give them 5 villages for 5 Pandavas so that they can live in peace. But for that, Duryodhana responds, and Duryodhana outright rejects that and says, I will not give the land where you can which is occupied with the tip of the needle, means like he is not going to spare any land for the Pandavas. So then after all the attempts for keeping all the attempts of peacekeeping is didn't work, then the alternate is to fight. Okay, then the Pandavas, they sent messages to all the kings all over the world, whoever says, see this fight, there is a fight going on between going to happen between Pandavas and Kauravas. Whomever side you want to take, you can take. So the Kauravas also worked, like when the Pandavas are in exile, they were in the forest on exile for 13 years. The Kauravas has increased their power, increased their alliances with many kings. So they managed to get 11 Akshohinis of army. So in those days, I will tell you, Akshohinis means a specific number of chariots, a specific number of foot soldiers, and specific number of elephants. So altogether, it comes to some million soldiers, something like that in one Akshohini. So like that, the Kauravas were able to get 11 Akshohinis of army on their side, and Pandavas were able to get 7 Akshohinis of army on their side. So basically, totally there are 18 Akshohinis of army that fought in the Battle of Kurukshetra. And the Battle of Kurukshetra happened for 18 days. So the number 18 is very significant in Bhagavad Gita. So the number of Akshohinis of army who fought in the Kurukshetra are 18, and the war is also fought for 18. Means the war at Kurukshetra between Pandavas and Kauravas happened for 18 days, and also the number of chapters in Bhagavad Gita are also 18. So like that. So after that, when Kurukshetra war has started, then the Krishna has to take sides. So both Krishna is related to both Pandavas and Kauravas. So actually, when so Krishna tried to settle down the matter, but it didn't work out. So, but in order to take help from Krishna, both Duryodhana and Arjuna goes to Krishna and request Krishna to fight on their side. Krishna says, because you both are related to me, I will not fight. I will give 2 options for you. So all my armies on one side, my army name is Narayani Sena. All my Narayani Sena is on one side, and I will be on one side, and I will not fight in the war. I will only be an advisor, or I will not touch any weapon in the Battle of Kurukshetra. So then Arjuna opts for Krishna. Arjuna says, like, you just be on our side. And Duryodhana happily takes the Narayani Sena, which is one Akshohini of army. So then the Battle of Kurukshetra is about to begin. Then and at that point of time, this Kauravas are the sons of Dhritarashtra, right? So Dhritarashtra is blind by birth, so he cannot go to the war. So, but he wanted to know what's happening at the war. So before war starts, Vyasudeva comes to Dhritarashtra and says, see, if this war happens, entire of your family is going to get destroyed. Try to stop this war. But Duryodhana and his son, even Dhritarashtra also was confident that they will win, because they have 11 Akshohinis of army, and the soldiers and the fighters they are on their side are very powerful, thinking that they will win. And Dhritarashtra doesn't put much effort, because he also says, I cannot do anything because I'm helpless due to my affection towards my son. then Vyasdeva says, okay, then you have to see all your sons dead. Then Vyasdeva says, shall I give you the vision so that you can be able to see the war, what's happening in the war? But Dhritarashtra says, I don't like to see my sons killed, but I would like to know what's happening in the war. So then Vyasdeva says, then I will give that vision to Sanjaya. Sanjaya is the disciple of Vyasdeva, and who was working in the palace of Dhritarashtra as an as an assistant to Dhritarashtra. So Vyasdeva gives this vision to Sanjaya. So then when the battle has started, the Sanjaya and Dhritarashtra were sitting in the palace of Hastinapur, and Sanjaya was meditating and seeing everything in his vision, which is due to the empowerment of Vyasdeva. And at that point in time, Dhritarashtra asked Sanjaya, okay, the shloka says, Dhritarashtra uvacha dharma kshetre kurukshetre samveta yussavaha mamaka pandava chaiva kimakurvata Sanjaya. So Dhritarashtra asks, O Sanjaya, what did my sons and sons of Pandu do, having gathered with the desire to fight at the Kurukshetra, the place of Dharma? So, basically, here, like Dhritarashtra himself is saying, the Kurukshetra is place of Dharma, means like it was the place of sacrifice where the demigods used to come. It's also greater significance because the Kuru, who was the ancestor of these all these Pandavas and Kauravas, he performed great sacrifice at that place, and that place has that power. Any battle fought on that war, only the person who is on the side of Dharma will win. So Kurukshetra, the place also has a specific significance. Then after Dhritarashtra asked about this thing, and Sanjaya started speaking, started responding to Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra Sanjaya uvacha drishtato pandavanekam yuyam duryodhanastada acharyam upagamyamya raja vachanam abraved. So Sanjaya started speaking. Sanjaya goes into meditation and he sees what's happening in the battlefield. Both the armies are standing on this, are ready to fight. At that point of time, Duryodhana goes to his teacher, who is called Dronacharya, and Duryodhana starts speaking. Okay, Duryodhana says, "O teacher, see the great army of the sons of Pandu arranged in the battlefield." Okay, and see, we are not going in depth into Bhagavad Gita because our main principle is just to get the our main motto is to get the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, how we can apply the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita to in our daily life. So the first chapter mainly deals with all this army thing comparison. So Duryodhana started listing all the warriors that are present on his side, and also he mentions different warriors who are present on their side, and Duryodhana's mentality was, everyone is ready to give up life for my sake, and he's not is like self-centered. So and also he lists many Atirathis, Maharathis. What is Maharathi? Maharathi means one who can fight with 10,000 archers, and who is expert in both weapons and scripts. And Atirata is one who can fight with unlimited troops, and then a Ratha is one who can fight with one opponent. So he actually, the Duryodhana will explain all these things in the beginning of the chapter. So, and then he actually uses his diplomacy also. Okay, he uses we are way stronger than this side. The Kaurava side is The commander of the Kaurava side is Bhishma, who is the most powerful archer of that time. And like, he actually defeated even Parashuram also. Even he actually defeated uh, all the kings also in his time. And on the other side, the army commander of the Pandavas is Bhimasen, means Bhima. He was very not very powerful when compared to the Kauravas. So, and taking all these into consideration, means all the materialistic calculations, Duryodhana was very confident about his victory. And then what happened? So in the 11th verse, he says, situated on your positions for attack, you should protect the Bhishma from all sides. So he's saying Bhishma Deva, who is our commander, is very powerful, and his power is very much greater when compared to the opposite side, the Bhima. So, but you have to give protection to Bhishma, because it's a war, and we have to give protection to Bhishma, and he will lead us to victory. That was his calculation. So if we see, like when it comes to application part, every aspect of our life is centered around happiness. Like we are looking for happiness, which is the right thing. Why right thing? Because as we said, we are spirit soul. What is the nature of soul? Anandamaya Abhyasa means it is always seeking pleasure. Whatever we do, both anything spiritual, material, anything we do, the main goal of our endeavors is happiness. So we are looking for the right thing, because it is the nature of the soul to seek happiness, but in wrong place. Because whatever the material condition that we may achieve with our endeavors, it will not give long lasting happiness in this material world. Because sometimes we come across failures. It will futility, and also sometimes instability. We may achieve the something, but it may sometimes give happiness and also sometimes give distress. Means not so stable and temporary. Anything that we achieve, like if you achieve anything, like for suppose we as a children, we all remember, right? In the beginning, we want to have a bicycle. As soon as we get the bicycle, we are totally happy. As we grow up, the taste for bicycle is gone, and we need to have a bike or a car. Even if you buy a new car of your choice, the happiness will stay only for few months, at most a year, and then that's gone. Or even like new job, or married life, or anything exciting, like going to different places. Anything that we do in this material world, it will give only temporary happiness. This happiness lasts only for certain amount of time, and afterwards it won't give any more happiness. Just like we give the example of gulab jamun, right? First gulab jamun will taste very nice, but the 10th gulab jamun is not very tasty at all. So it is temporary. And everything that comes in, every happiness that comes in this material world is embedded with some suffering. Pain comes along with the happiness. Just like what the example they give is, like if you want the milk of a cow, you'll also you have to feed the cow, and cow will give cow dung, and we have to clean it like that. And also anything, if you want to get a job comes with many responsibilities, and salary also you can get. Salary gives happiness, but the things that you have to do for the job gives pain. So that is materialistic condition. But in a spiritual condition, like when we achieve the high progress, when you when you progress spiritually, the spiritual aspect, it will give happiness both in performance, and also it will give happiness at the end also. But the problem with this, like as Krishna says, the spiritual happiness in the spiritual life is like in the beginning, it will be like very bitter, because due to our conditioning, because we got accustomed to many conditioned happiness condition, because we have a specific how can I say that, we already have a perspective, no, how the happiness means, like we are conditioned to certain happiness, material happiness, due to which our spiritual happiness will not give much excitement, much taste in the beginning. But as we even but it looks bitter, but if we continue doing it, at the end you can, just by remembering Krishna, or just by talking about Krishna, or just by discussing about Krishna pastimes, or any sadhana that is associated with any spirituality, will give way higher pleasure than any material happiness. That's why in the chart that we showed, like I have showed how karma kanda they will lead to heavenly planet, but the jnanis will give to Brahma Jyoti. It is said that the happiness that is achieved in Brahma Jyoti is way higher than the happiness that is achieved in the heavenly planets. That's why the great sages who have the proper knowledge, they aspire to go to Brahma Jyoti. But from the Brahma Jyoti, there is no suffering in the Brahma Jyoti, but there is suffering in the heavenly planets. So you can stay in the heavenly planets only as long as you are balanced. See, when you do good karma, you get certain kind of good reaction, means like a good karma. It's like a credit card balance. Okay, as long as you have that karma, the good karma, pious credit balance, you can enjoy in the heavenly planets. As soon as your pious credits exhaust, you have to fall down into the material world to perform karma again. Just like now we have a credit card. As long as there is balance on the credit card, you can enjoy. As soon as credit card gets the balance get exhausted, you have to go back and work and again earn money and then increase the balance so that you can enjoy later. So, and that in the Brahma Jyoti, you don't have any happiness, any suffering. Means there is no exhaustion. Means you can stay in the Brahma Jyoti. But if you identify, there is a chance from falling from Brahma Jyoti level also. But the happiness derived in Brahma Jyoti is million times more than the happiness in the Swargaloka. And the happiness that a yogi gets on Paramatma realization is millions times more than the happiness of a Brahma Jyoti. And the happiness that a devotee, when he performs spiritual activity, or when he go back to spiritual world, is way higher than all these happinesses. So it doesn't mean that we have to renounce everything, but what I mean to say is, this is not the place of happiness. That's why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, this material world is dukkhalayam ashashvatam. So it's like a place, it's like a ocean, and you cannot imagine that I will jump into ocean at the same time I'll remain dry. So that's why this world is compared to material world. So what before going further into Bhagavad Gita, we'll have a little bit of analysis of characters of Bhagavad Gita. So what is the Dhritarashtra's mentality? Dhritarashtra's mentality is like, he was born blind and he wanted to have kingdom, but he was born blind, he was not given the kingdom. Dhritarashtra is the father of Duryodhana, okay? Like the blind king that we have shown in the beginning. And okay, he was born blind, he was not given the kingdom, and he doesn't want to accept the unchangeable. And he still wanted to be a king. But by time, place, and circumstances, he get the chance to become a king, because the Pandu, who was the actual king, dies untimely. So he was the acting king. Karyakari Raja means like for the sake of maintaining the kingdom, he actually was given in charge of the kingdom. Okay, and he doesn't want to quit his position. He got the temporary position, but he doesn't want to quit his position. And he had the association of great devotees like Bhishma Deva, Dronacharya. He had the association of even Krishna also. He had the association of great devotees. He had the association of Vidura. But he didn't take the association of devotee seriously. He only thought of engaging himself in the material enjoyment. So, so this kind of mentality will lead to Duryodhana behavior, because Dhritarashtra was blind, but his mentality, he is due to his attachment, due to his not following the dharma, leads to Duryodhana mentality. What Duryodhana mentality? You do anything, you kill other party, you do anything but for the sake of your enjoyment. So, so Dhritarashtra mentality is, he hears from Sanjaya, he hears from Vidura. Vidura is also great devotee. He hears from Bhishma Deva, but he understands that what he is doing is wrong, but he's not follow. He doesn't follow. Why he doesn't follow? Because of weakness of the heart. So if we see many of us, I myself, I know what is, sometimes we know what is right in any circumstance, because sometimes chanting, like for my in my example, chanting in the morning session is right, waking up early in the morning is right thing to do. But sometimes I miss, and also if you take many things like that, we don't want to see some things on the internet, or we don't want to see something on the hear about something or discuss about something, but we still discuss. And also there are many situations where we know, like drinking alcohol or smoking or associating with materialistic people, all of them are bad. I don't want to do them, but I still do them due to conditioning. So that is the Hrudaya Daurbalya, means the weakness of the heart. So that is the mentality of Dhritarashtra. So Bhagavad Gita starts with Dhritarashtra, means everybody has these tendencies, everybody has these limitations, everybody has these weaknesses. So we all have these weaknesses. So Bhagavad Gita starts from there, being the conditioned life. Okay. And then Duryodhana is one of the main characters of Bhagavad Gita. So Duryodhana, he actually, he was due to bad association, like the way he grew up, his personality developed in such a way due to the bad association, bad association of Shakuni or something like that. Okay. And he is personification of envy of successful people. Basically, when partition came from between the Pandavas and Kauravas, the Pandavas were given half of the kingdom and Kauravas are given half of the kingdom. Actually, Pandavas are given very unfertile land, and the kingdom, the part of the kingdom which is almost barren. And but Pandavas, due to their effort and due to their abilities, they were able to make the kingdom very prosperous. And this Duryodhana, even though he had a very better kingdom, but when due to the success of the Pandavas, he became more envious. And due to his greed, envy, due to his envy, he developed a greed to get the kingdom of the Pandavas also. So this envy and greed, and also no satisfaction with what we have or not getting it. This is also mentality of Duryodhana. He had the very nice kingdom, very opulent kingdom. He had no rivals, because all the powerful men are his friends and relatives. So, and even Yudhishthira Maharaj, even like he was willing to go to any extent for his sake. And he has cheating mentality. He actually, Duryodhana tries to kill the Pandavas many times. And the cheating mentality and vengeance, like he was not able to forgive even an insignificant mistake of others. In the sake of Mahabharata, in Mahabharata, what happened? One time Duryodhana go to Mayasabha, he slips and falls down, and Draupadi, she laughs, and for that he actually develops such an vengeance that everything. Then he actually increased his envy and hatred toward the Pandavas to such extent that he cheated the Pandavas and he tried to disrobe the Draupadi. So such a vengeance he had, and he didn't give up anything, like due to his false ego. Means something is not on his side, something is not going right. Is not letting. He has a mentality of not letting go. Okay, Sometimes we get insulted. Sometimes we cannot do anything about the situation. We should let them go. We should see it like a bad dream. Okay, this is my bad karma. As I'm supposed to get insulted, or I'm supposed to be unsuccessful in the situation, and we should let that go. Means just like if you focus on the same incident, your whole life will get tied up to that incident, and your whole life will take a different turn. Just in the sake of Duryodhana, because of that one incident, if you would have forgiven, thinking that, oh, she's one of our relative only, what is the big matter? Because but he wanted to insult, he wanted to cheat Pandavas, he wanted to take vengeance on the Pandavas. So due to these all happens due to false ego. So this is the mentality of Duryodhana, and just in order to take revenge, he actually devised different plans with Shakuni and cheated the Pandavas in dice game. And this entire everything came up to the war of Kurukshetra. And we experience such feelings, okay? This due to such feelings, we actually, due to that mentality of Duryodhana, we actually misuse the human form of life. Sometimes, for insignificant things, we use like we spend a lot of time and energy that which is of no use, okay? And he's not following dharma. Duryodhana is not following dharma. Now we also like sometimes give up the religious principles just for the sake of materialistic enjoyment. So what is dharma means? Dharma means keeping the principles before pleasures. That is dharma, means which will elevate us, which will take us higher in our conduct, we have to live by the principles. That is dharma. So like responsibility first, then pleasure later, or enjoyment later. So like if we go by the sense gratification, there is no limit for the sense gratification. Scripture say that sense gratification is like fire, okay, and the object of senses is like the ghee, or like petrol or a gas. So you cannot exhaust the sense gratification with the objects of senses. Just like you want to eat more, or you want to I'm just giving the basic example, okay? Like you can correlate this example to anything, illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, meat eating, all those things we can correlate to that, okay? So we cannot satisfy our senses by providing the objects of sense gratification. What is the objects of sense gratification means? For the tongue, tasting the relishable objects like sweets and meat and everything. These are the objects of sense gratification for the tongue. For the ears, to want to watch something pleasurable, that is the object of sense gratification for the ears. To want to hear something pleasing, that is the object of sense gratification for the ears. The object of sense gratification for the ego varies, depends on what type of mentality that we have. So if you see, like out of ego only, many wars has happened. So we cannot satisfy our senses. Ego is also one of our subtle sense, okay? Like if you take the example of Ravana and Hiranyakashipu, Ravana has thousands of women at his disposal, but he still went for Sita and got killed. Hiranyakashipu, he had the control over all over 3 worlds, but his little son Prahlad was not listening to him. That's why he offended that devotee and he was killed by Narasimhadev. So like that. So this sense gratification is such that like we may have many things that are we may have many friends, but one person is not behaving with us properly. We'll focus on one that person, and we'll make our life miserable. So that's why like this sense gratification cannot give us happiness. So controlling the senses, regulating the senses, controlling our mind, and learning to let go So like that will give the peace of mind for us, which will lead to higher pleasures. So we undergo many battles in various levels, internal level, with ourselves, lower nature versus higher nature, So we want to do something, and our higher nature says, "Don't do that. That is going to degrade you. That is going to defame your, bring down your character." Uh, and that fight is going on. Whomever you support, whatever the type of engagements that you prefer, that person you support, means like that way you grow. Not just like it is said that there is a good dog and bad dog in our heart. So good dog says, don't do bad things, don't steal, don't insult others, don't behave properly with others. That is good dog. And bad dog says, if somebody offends you, you just have to take revenge. You have to be very strict with sense gratification. You have to go for sense gratification, like that. So that is a bad dog. So who wins? Which dog wins based on whom you feed, or which with which with compared to our higher self and lower self, whomever you support, your mind supports, or your intelligence supports, that that nature will prevail. And external, with other living entities. We also go through many battles with other living entities also, like bugs, terrorists, and also some enemies. So we also go with other, we also develop enmity with other living entities also. So there is a great significance. Greater achievement can be done by tolerating and growing through the situation. Means like taking every experience as a learning stone, and then learning the lessons from it, and then growing through the situation. It's not only going through the situation, means just tolerating means going through the situation, but growing through the situation means being able to perfectly handle the situation, being able to smile at the insults, that kind of situations. So that kind of abilities that we have to develop. So like as per the ecology also, like what does it means, like the biologist Eva Wilson says, every living creature in this material world has a contribution to the ecology. Like cows, they contribute through their dung, and also they have become the food for the carnivorous animals, and carnivorous animals will keep the balance of the herbivore by killing the herbivorous animals. Like, so he says every living creature, even the fishes, even the insects also has some contribution to the ecology. Means due to their being present in the cycle, food cycle, the ecological balance is maintained. But the humans have no contribution at all for the ecological cycle. Means they are not contributing to the nature at all. Means, so then what is the purpose of human life? So it is not only eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So the contribution for the purpose of human life is to go to have to go through higher spiritual evolution. Basically animals are contributing on the physical level, but the humans, they are using the human form of life to inquire about the higher things, to inquire about God. What is the purpose of this creation? What is the purpose of human life? Is it only eating, sleeping, and mating and defending? Is there any purpose? Is there any purpose for the higher intelligence? Is there any purpose for higher mental and physical abilities that human beings have? So when we inquire that, we have to we inquire that, and we understand it, and then we apply our life. We change our living way in such a way that we make progress spiritually also. And what is the nature of Arjuna? Arjuna is friend of Krishna. He is a follower of Dharma, and he is very compassionate. And the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. So Arjuna mentality was, he was in 13 years, even he was in exile. So he said, okay, there is nothing more to do now. Okay, I will just go through this forest life. After 13 years, then we'll see, I will get the kingdom. Then only I'll be able to manage the kingdom nicely like that. So it is not the mentality of Arjuna. So for 13 years, he was only focused was, okay, if war happens, I should be ready. I should be prepared. I should be prepared with all the equipments. So he did tapasya. He went to Sargaloka. He learned many different skills, so that he got himself prepared for the worst of the situation, which is the war. So in the same way, our material life also offers. Sometimes our material life seems that not much is happening in our life. We have time, we have nice job, we have nice family, everything is going smooth, and let it happen like that. So, but if we become complacent, if you don't use that time and leisure, when we have time and energy, as a youth we have energy. As a youth our senses are working nice. Now we are able to see nicely, we are able to hear nicely, we are able to understand the facts. But we take this time and circumstances for granted, and we just waste our life doing nothing productive. Then at the end of life, like Bhagavad Gita says, life is a preparation, death is an examination. What is the life preparing for? No, in later chapter, Krishna says, Antya kalecha mameva swaran mukta kalevaram yah prayachanti samadbhavam yatina satra samshaya. Yam yam vapi swaran bhava tajatyanti kalevaram tam tam iti kaunteya. Means what he says is, whatever your meditation, whomever you think at the time of death, that state you attain without fail. If you think of your family, you're going to take rebirth in your family. If your good karma allows. If your good karma doesn't allow, then you will become an annual in the same family. If you think of going back to Krishna, you'll go back to Krishna. If you think of becoming a demigod, you'll become a demigod if you have enough good karma. So whatever the situation, so what is the purpose of life? Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita is Ante kaleche mameva smaran mukta kalevara, means at the time of death, remembering Krishna is the highest achievable object in the human form of life. And all the Vedas, all the Puranas, all the sages, they actually agree with this. Antya Narayana Smriti, remembering Krishna at the time of death is the highest perfection that one can achieve in the human form of life. So when we have physical abilities, when you have nice family setup where you don't have much anxieties and much troubles, but you just enjoy the situations and do nothing to to use it for your future, then you are actually wasting your time. So that's why it is said that the more you sweat in peace. So when everything is peaceful, you have to do more hard work so that you sweat in peace. Then the less you bleed in war. Just like Arjuna, he prepared for the war for 13 years without being complacent. So we have to prepare for ourselves. We have to prepare for the last moment. At the time of death, we don't have this physical ability. At the time of death, we will not be able to manage our body and mind. And at the time of in this old age, when you want to read Bhagavad Gita, you won't be able to see clearly with your eyes. And if anybody says anything spiritual to you at the old age, you will not be able to hear. Even if you are able to hear, your mind will be thinking so many things. Oh, I'm not able to do that. I'm not able to do that. And it is chinta sakta, means he lost himself in the thoughts of past or future. So the old age is such a miserable condition. So we have to prepare. We have to when our senses are working properly and we have the strength, we have to use all these energies and skills and all this time and energy so more productive way. We have to acquire spiritual knowledge and we have to apply it. And when we apply it, we get realizations, we get experiences. With the experiences, with the realizations, we get the conviction that yes, this process is working. If you don't get that conviction before our senses lose their strength, then we are going to just waste of this human form of life. And when we leave this body, we don't know when we are going to get the human form of life. That's why it is said human form of life is sudurlabha, means It is very, very rare to achieve. After many passing through many millions and millions of births, we finally achieve this human form of life. And that's why the first phrase of Vedanta Sutra says, Atato Brahma Jignasa, means now that you got the human form of life, you just inquire about the Brahman. So the more we practice your spiritual culture intensely when your life is going peacefully, then when provoking situations comes in life, we'll be able to face them boldly without bleeding too much. So when we listen to the spiritual topics and when we understand what is the purpose of life properly, then we don't give much importance to trivial things, no, somebody getting insulted or no, some like a failure in some aspect of life. We don't take them very seriously. We focus on higher goal and we do our duties perfectly in this world. But our main goal is to progress spiritually. So that is the nature of Arjuna. So the Arjuna is the devotee of Krishna. That's why he got all these pious qualities. So what is Krishna's nature? Krishna's nature is he first gave the choice to Arjuna to choose. You want to choose my army or me? You want to choose my material energy or me? You want to choose my you want material pleasure or me? So he gave all his energy, Narayan's energy to Duryodhana because Arjuna doesn't want them. Because Arjuna was his devotee, he gave him the first choice. And
yeah, there is a point to that, right? When they go, when both their moms send them to meet the Krishna, Arjuna sits on the feet near the feet of
that is also,
Krishna.
that's what I'm telling. That is also thing that is detail, Mataji. Means
okay.
if at that point of time, if Duryodhana says, I came first, that's why you have to give me choice, then Krishna would have given the choice to Duryodhana, right? Because as a fact, Duryodhana came first to ask help from Krishna. So, but Krishna intentionally gave first choice to Arjuna.
Because when he opens his eyes, first person he sees is Arjuna, not
Arjuna.
Duryodhana, because he's towards
but
the
as per the context, Duryodhana came first, right? And Duryodhana claims, I should get the first choice.
Yeah.
So Krishna gave the first choice to Arjuna because he wanted to see what Arjuna prefers. So, but Arjuna actually takes Krishna, not Krishna's army. So in the same way, but that's what Duryodhana wanted also. So, and also he gave his energy, means his energies are like material opulences, name, fame, all these energies are different energies of Krishna. Krishna has unlimited energies. So Krishna gave all these unlimited energies to Duryodhana, but he gave himself to Krishna, to Arjuna, who is his devotee. So Krishna himself defeated 23 Akshohinis of armies of Jarasandha 17 times. Just Krishna and Balram with handful of soldiers, they defeated 23 Akshohinis of army. So now how many Akshohinis of army are battling in this Kurukshetra war? Are only 18 Akshohinis of army. So that is the capacity of Krishna. If Krishna desired, he could have just wiped off this entire Kurukshetra, the opponents of the Pandavas by himself. That is the power of Krishna. Because he already defeated Jarasandha with Jarasandha comes to attack Krishna with 23 Akshohinas of army every time. He comes like that 17 times. So 17 times he killed all the armies, all the soldiers, all the warriors on the side of Jarasandha, and just left Jarasandha alive with nothing. So, and 18th time he just wanted just because he wanted to he doesn't because as per the destiny, Jarasandha has to face the death in the hands of Bhima. So that's why he relocated every entire Dwarka to entire Mathura to Dwarka, all his citizens and everyone. So, but he gave this chance to Arjuna so that he will be glorified. So Krishna always tries to glorify his devotees. So Krishna's devotees doesn't need anything but Krishna, and Krishna doesn't need anything but his devotees. So that is the love for his devotees. So even in Mahabharata, they show that one time in the Kurukshetra war, as per Krishna's promise, Krishna promised that I will not touch, I will not carry any weapon, I will not use any weapon. And Bhishma Dev says, I will make Krishna use his weapon. So, and Bhishma Dev is also devotee of Krishna, and Arjuna is also his devotee of Krishna. So one time what happened, this Bhishma Dev has came face to face with Arjuna, and Arjuna was not fighting with vigor because he loves Bhishma Dev. But Bhishma Dev, because he know how to make Krishna break his promise, he actually gives very hard time to Arjuna. He shoots arrows to Arjuna in such a way that Arjuna was suffering intensely. So, and for the sake of his devotee, Krishna broke his promise, and he took the chariot wheel and went on Bhishma Dev to fight with Bhishma Dev. So basically, for the sake of his devotee, Krishna is willing to break his promise. So for the sake of devotee, Krishna will go to any extent. So that is the nature of Krishna. And Krishna also gives the message of Srimad Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and also guides the humanity. And Krishna says, more than my promise, I will be very much happy to withhold the promise of my devotees. That's why in Bhagavad Gita 9.31, Krishna says, Kaunteya pratijanahi name bhakta pranashyati. Means Arjuna boldly declared that my devotee will never perish. Means once you take up Krishna's devotion, Krishna bhakti, you will never perish. Means you will never, you will, like your spiritual, once you start spiritual life, there is only success, there is no failure at all. Means like even if some pause happens, sometimes somebody making nice spiritual advancement, but due to some distraction or due to some inconvenience, they are not able to perform bhakti. So their life, they will give up the bhakti. But even in this lifetime or the next lifetime, they will resume the bhakti again and start from wherever they left with. Means if they have made in this life 30% of progress, in the next life or in this life, they'll start from 31%. So he never fails his affection for his devotees. Like that's what Prabhupada says in 21st and 22nd purport. And Krishna is our chariot driver also. How is Krishna is our chariot driver? Because Krishna is sitting in the heart of our along with us, and he is also helping us. So as we focus inside, as we turn towards Krishna, Krishna will lead us to a right path. So that is the end of today's session. If you have any questions or any comments, you can discuss. I'm sorry, I went a little over time. Any questions? Anything?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes, Mata.
So my question is, as we do the bad karma, we have to come back and have pain in a human life, right? So is this the same for the good karma? If you do
Yes.
good karma, you have to come back and have the fruit for
Yes.
that too?
Yeah. We discussed it that in the when we are discussing laws of karma, right? Good
Right.
karma is like getting bound by iron chain. Bad karma
Right.
is getting bound by golden chain. So iron chain or golden chain, both are going to bind you. So that's why you only have to do akarma.
Akarma. Okay, so to be neutral.
To be neutral, yeah, neutral karmas. Doing
So-
everything, doing all the karma for the sake of Krishna.
Okay.
Okay.
But you
That
are
is
doing karma, right? You
Huh?
are doing karma, good karma, but thinking that I'm doing for Krishna.
Good karma, and you have to give all the results for Krishna, and you have to be fully Krishna conscious, even while doing Krishna karma. Good karma.
Then we are not getting in good karma or bad karma.
We are not
Okay.
going to get any results. See,
Okay.
you are maintaining family. You
Right.
maintain a family thinking that this is not my family, this is Krishna's family. You are working a job. You work in a job thinking that I have to maintain the family of Krishna. You go for
Right.
shopping. Now you have to go for shopping thinking that, oh, I have to bring some things that are needed for Krishna's service.
Right.
So
Right.
everything, any karma that you do, only keeps Krishna in do it for Krishna's sake. That is called, that way you do akarma.
Okay. Yeah.
Anybody have any more questions? Mata left. Mahalakshmi Mata, you were saying something that time.
No, I'm good. I already asked.
Okay, if nobody have any questions, we'll end it here. Thank you all very much.
Thank
Jai
you.
Bhagavad Gita.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Good night.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna Mata.